I can't imagine like having to deal with so much chatter around me when I'm trying to be my best self in sports. Like it's so hard to juggle the mental weight of it all with that plus the competition. And I'm just like, man, like thank God these girls keep showing up the way that they do. And, I
Yeah.
just pray that all of us can just give them the space to be who they are.
Well, first off, thank you so much for joining me on all my platforms. You are always so good to me, and I appreciate it. I want to say something to you. I like to tell these personal stories. I've done this to you before. But when I first
Mhm.
met you, when I was on First Take, I remember you coming on, and I didn't know. Um, I had so much going on in that time in my life. It was just a lot coming really
Yeah.
fast. And I didn't know if, in fact, we had a bond or reconnected. And I had really put you in a category. I was like, okay, I can't really, I don't know how nice she is. I don't think she's nice. And then you had turned around and you were so generous and kind to me. And it just reminds me that um, time tells the story for everybody. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So over the years, we've gotten to know each other, and I've watched you go from this, this Olympic track star to obviously seeing you as a mother, seeing you as a wife, seeing you as an analyst, seeing you host your own show, your entertainment show, and that is scary in itself. And
yes.
what I have seen each and every time, because I know it's hard to do this, you just show up your full self, whether you feel comfortable, whether you don't know that you're doing the best, you just show up and give your best.
Yeah.
Where does that fearlessness come from?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for always inviting me to all your platforms. It means a lot to me. And I think I've also told you this before, but I respect what you do so much and I
Oh,
admire you so much and you're so
thank
needed
you.
in every space that you're in. So
Thank
I'll
you.
always show up for you and be there alongside you. So thank you for that. It's so funny that you talk about fearlessness because my mom always says, because my mom is actually the complete opposite of me. She has a lot of fear. Yeah, she's the one who is afraid to try. And, I think that God blessed me with her because through me and through my fearlessness, she's also found her strength and her courage. And I would say that, between my mom and my mom also helped me see it in myself, like my dad was always the parent who always saw the vision and would always push me and always encourage me. But my mom was also my soft place to land. And so I needed both of them to be able to embrace this fearlessness that I think was naturally inside of me. And I'm that person who always says yes to life. So it's like whatever is coming my way, I'm like, I'm gonna go for it. And even if it doesn't work, I'm going to fail forward and figure it out. And I think that it's been my superpower for the majority of my career.
You said your mom isn't fearless. That's so interesting because normally we take after the people who raise us. Your dad, however,
Yes.
and to me it's not unusual for a man to be fearless. Where are your parents from? Because I know they were both athletes. Where are they from
Yeah.
originally?
Yeah. So both my parents are from Jamaica. And I was born and raised there as well. I didn't migrate to the States till I was 12. And
Mm,
so both my parents were athletes. My dad was a great soccer player. I think if he were born in a different time and there was different infrastructure when he was competing, he would have gone on to be one of the best in the world. All of his, colleagues say that about him. And I actually saw film of him. He was really great. My mom ran track as well, but she didn't go on. She ran in high school and then kind of transitioned out of sports. But they both were very athletic. And like I said, my dad especially saw that talent in me and that drive as young as 9, and really nurtured it.
being Jamaican, what do you think your quality as a person, as a African American woman here in the States, what's
Yeah,
different? Because I
yeah,
believe Caribbean culture is different, and you bring
yeah,
that to the States.
yeah,
What's one of the big things that you've noticed that your friends that are born
yeah,
and raised here and say, "Girl, we don't do that," or "Y'all do
yeah,
that," and
yeah,
"Y'all got that," or "Your
yeah,
values are different morally," or "Family is key," whatever it is. What have you
yeah.
noticed the difference? I'm really curious.
Yeah, I would say there are a couple of things. I would say that there is this, and I think it's true for anyone who is born in a country where it's predominantly the same race, right? So Jamaican is predominantly Black. And
Yeah.
so the prime minister was Black, the teachers were Black, the doctors were Black, the coaches were, everybody is Black. And so I think that without even someone having to tell you or say anything to you, it instills confidence in you that you can do and become anything. And I think that that's one of the things that I brought to the States, was that I always saw myself as someone who could be great. Like there was no
Yeah.
if, ands, or buts about it. Like it was just going to happen. It was about just me doing the work. And so I would say that that's a part of growing up in a culture where you see yourself reflected in every space. So I would say that. I also do think that, I obviously I see this. You know, there are obviously American families that are as close as we are, as a Jamaican family, but I do think that there is a multi generational bond that, you know, like where it's like your parents remain a huge part of your life for a long time. You know, like I think like in Chinese cultures and other cultures where, you know, like you nurture that relationship, and they, you know, they always hold that really high place in your life. It's not like I think American culture where it's like when you get to 18 you move out and you move on and you find your own life. To me, that's not as traditional in Jamaica. It's like, hey, you know, we're a unit for forever. And, you know, I've
Mm.
had to find that balance because obviously my husband's American. So he'd be like, girl, we the time has come. You need to be on your own too. You know what I mean? And but I think he also sees it as, you know, there are definitely benefits to it as well. So I would say probably those two things, Carrie, have been the two most things that have made the most impact on my life. Is one, seeing other Black people being excellent all the time, and kind of that, you know, family bond that is just never broken.
I was once told this story, and first of all, the familial aspect of you is so beautiful. I think oftentimes I gravitate towards people who have that more in them. I am very much head down, do my job, figure it out. I was always a
Mhm.
social loner,
Mhm.
and I thrive as, you know, being
Yeah.
raised. I have brothers and sisters, but being raised as an only child, I think I thrive, you know, just in my soloness, which doesn't always work in my benefit because people are like, she's stuck up, and I'm like, nope, I just like being alone. Nope, I just like being by
Yeah.
myself. I'm not. I'm sorry. So, but I
Yeah.
envy you, and I am attracted towards that because I too want to let that part of my myself show. I think you, as a Black woman, are the antithesis of what they believe we are, right? Because there's
Mhm.
perception, and it's always their bias when they meet us. But if you look at the jobs that you've had, and I'm in, and I'll get to track and field, but
Sure.
post your career, still
Yeah.
working in track and field, still being a host, how have you been perceived on and off set?
Oh, that is a good question, and a very deep one that I've never been asked. And I don't know how much thought I've really put into that.
What do
But
you
it's a
think the
really good
narrative
one.
is? How about what's the narrative versus who you are?
Yeah, you know, so I think that I have been fortunate to mostly be in spaces where I have really been invited and honored and cherished, right? People want me to be there. And so, you know, there is this feeling of like people see me as a champion, they see me as someone who's going to work hard, who is a good teammate. And I think for the most part, my experiences have been really good in my work environments. I think that I guess there, you know, there, I think what I've had to do at times, and I think that you would also, you know, appreciate and understand this too, is that I've had to have people understand that it takes a little bit more for me as a Black woman to show up in these spaces, than it does for the traditional, you know, man or whoever else is there. I've had to demand certain things when it comes to hair and makeup, and, you know, things that make me feel comfortable, that make me happy. And you know, I remember there was one point where I was gonna be doing the hosting stuff, and I had my hoops in, and my producer was like, "Can you the hoop? Can you, why you gotta wear those hoops? Like, they're distracting from the mic." I said, "Well, they're about Black Girl Magic, and I'm not taking them off. Like, it's a part of who I am. Like it." And you know, he quickly was like, "Oh, no problem," you know. And so I think that I have this confidence to speak up for myself because of, you know, my sporting exploits and, you know, all of those other things. But I would say for the most part, Carrie, I feel like I've shown up and been perceived as really who I am,
That's fair.
largely in part because I feel like I'm very authentic. What you see is what you get. My social media reflects who I am. So it's a really good question. I want to be more thoughtful about it, Carrie. But for the most part, I feel like I have been perceived as who I am.
Well, the thing is, and there's been this conversation around Angel Reese lately, and how
Hmm.
she is perceived. And you are a
Yeah,
female athlete, you are a Black
yeah,
athlete.
yes,
And if I'm being honest with you, which is why I try to come here and be very naked,
yeah,
I do take not necessarily issue, but I do wish there was more polish around her etiquette. And what that means for me,
yeah,
simply as someone who covers her and wants to present her, because I know I see me as you
yeah,
can see yourself in her and qualities of
sure,
meaning, like the young Black
yeah,
woman trying to figure it out in a space where
sure,
she's rare. It's easy for them to cast aspersions and label women
yeah,
they are not familiar with.
right,
But I do know. that oftentimes when I feel like, oh gosh, okay, I think you taunted a beat too long. I do know that when I feel that, I know that people feel that way about me who don't understand me.
Right.
Meaning, when I
Right.
bring my full self to work, they're like,
Yeah.
"Ugh," no, or whatever it may be. So
Yeah.
I try to be very gentle when offering analysis or critique on
Yes.
her, on the Sha'Carri Richardsons of the world,
Yes.
because there is something that is polarizing. And I know I have been judged as well in that same
Hmm.
space.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on a young Black athlete such as a Sha'Carri Richardson or an Angel Reese trying to figure it out? Because when you become an overnight star, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's hard. So I love this conversation, and I think it's very important because I agree with you. I feel like, especially you and I, who kind of come from that old school way
Hmm.
of athletes and Black women showing
Hmm.
up, there is
Hmm.
something that comes up in us where we're like, ooh, like they're a little bit too brash or too right, and they're not going to
Two.
understand. They're not.
TOO.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes, exactly. They're not going to understand her. But I have to tell you, I love and respect and appreciate them so much for being brave enough and having the courage to show up authentically as themselves in every space. And I think it is a challenge for all of us to say, what is it in us that makes us feel like, ugh, when they're just being themselves, you know what I mean? And Cari, I grew up from, I'm from the era of, we just want to make Team USA proud. And like, like when in the
Yeah.
back of your mind,
Uh-huh.
you're like, I'm
Uh-huh.
about to knock if you buck, like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
go
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I certainly think it challenges our sensibilities when we see that. But I truly, truly, truly admire and respect, because the
Yeah.
truth is, you said it, Cari, they're going to keep evolving. And the woman that they are today, they won't be in 5 years. They won't be in 10 years, just like I have evolved so much, right? But they should be given the space and the freedom to evolve, because as they mature, the way that they operate, the way that they think, it's going to change. They're going to mature. But I got to say, I really admire and have a lot of, like you said, compassion for the Angel Reeses and the Sha'Carri Richardsons, because
I do.
they have to
I
carry
do.
this heavy load while also competing. Like, like I can't imagine like having to deal with so much chatter around me when I'm trying to be my best self in sports. Like it's so hard to juggle the mental weight of it all with that plus the competition. And I'm just like, man, like thank God these girls keep showing up the way that they do. And, I
Yeah.
just pray that all of us can just give them the space to be who they are.
Although I will tell you,
Hmm.
Sha'Carri Richardson, to me, maybe not in your world, but to me, in front of the camera, life, and this is what I said about, like, especially everyone was kind of hot about Emmanuel Acho's take. And I said this, I said, life will humble you. Why do we need to do it? Life will
Hmm.
humble you. Why do
Amen.
we need to do it?
Exactly.
And
That's a good take.
hey, that is, it's like, I don't need to come on TV and say what you did do wrong, or what you did do like what you did do wrong and how you need to be better, because life is going to show you that.
Right.
I.e. Sha'Carri Richardson. In
Yeah.
my opinion, I'm not in your world, but in my
Hmm.
opinion, after she went through all she went through, and she
Yeah.
was still nuck if you buck,
Yep.
something,
Yeah.
someone,
Yep.
some circumstance
Hmm.
allowed her to realize, all right, I'm gonna handle
Humble
this
it.
differently.
Yep.
I'm gonna let my work speak for itself as opposed to my
Exactly.
words.
Exactly.
And so I think that is when I said, okay, I
Hmm.
respect it, because you figured it out. And she figured that out quick.
Wait.
When I tell you, she figured that out at lightning speed. And
Yeah.
so life humbled her, because they
Yeah.
came on her, they came to her hard. We rose her like this high, and then every time we was mad at her. And I was like, yo. So
Yeah.
I feel like that will happen with Angel. I
Hmm.
come from the same school that you come from. However, SRR, let's talk about this, Sonya.
Hmm.
When we get comfortable and we know our worth, there's only so much pleasing we can do in these
Yeah.
spaces.
Hmm.
Because you said your black girl magic is your earrings. I still need
Yeah.
to show up like me. And if that makes you uncomfortable, it prevents me from doing the best that I can do if I'm not myself.
Exactly.
What is the conversation that we need to have so that they understand that we are here to stay
Yeah.
and this is who we are? Because I don't know why we have to have this conversation around black women and their etiquette on
over
camera as
and over.
athletes
Yeah.
over and over again? Why do we have to be labeled over and over again? How do we change that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think, if one of us had the answer, we'd be that, we change the world, right? Like it's like what is it? And I think, but I do think it's playing out right in front of our eyes. I think it
Okay.
is these unapologetic young women who are just doing it,
Mhm.
without needing permission and without necessarily addressing the conversations. It's like you said about Sha'Carri Richardson. It's like rose to fame overnight. I mean, the kind of fame that, typically doesn't happen in our sport. And then, she was up there fighting every battle, and then she realized, I got to stop fighting. I'm using all the energy that I need for the track, fighting everybody on social media. And then she did let her feet do the talking, and now she's able to even more so be all of who she is. So I don't know if it's so much a conversation as it is just continuing to follow the lead of these young people and young women who are just doing it, because the more we see it is the less it feels like something new and something rare. And it just is, just
I
like
hope
everything
so.
else,
I hope
and
so.
then people get to be themselves authentically. And it also impacts their performance. Like, look, I mean, look at where women's basketball is because of what,
Huge.
happened. I mean,
Shoot,
18
huge.
million.
We needed storylines and we need villains. And if I and we need angels and we need let me tell you something. I'm not calling anybody anything. Sha'Carri Richardson, like you said,
Mhm.
provided a storyline. And I hate that she had to learn she did this, but I hope she understands her value and what she brought to the sport.